Hey guys, my name's Pocket and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be continuing with our video series on the Season 11 changes. This video is going to focus on item changes and specifically items that I think are going to be useful in the support role. Now there's a lot of diversity in these new items as we're going to talk about as we go through them, so I fully expect to see a lot of these items off the support role on junglers, mid laners and top laners. But if I think that the items could be useful regularly on a support, then I'm going to include them in this video. Now to start off, we're going to talk about old items that have been changed. Then we're going to go on to look at some of the new items. I'll put timestamps in the video description if you want to get to anything specific, and let's just get straight into it. Now to start off with the actual support items. These are your initial items on support and the ones that give you a quest and can turn into ward items. Now these items have been left relatively unchanged, however their early game stacking has been buffed. This means for Spectral Sickle and Spellthief's Edge, instead of granting 15 gold every time you hit an enemy, you are now granted 20 gold. You still get a stack every 10 seconds for a maximum of 3 stacks. For Steel's Shoulder Guards and Relic Shield, you are still granted the normal kill gold, but you now grant a stack every 35 seconds instead of every 45 seconds. This just means that typically your gold earnings are going to be quicker in the early game when you are playing a support now, but once you've finished your missions and fully stacked these items, they still only grant the same passive gold earnings as they did before, so you're not going to be getting any late game gold bonus. I imagine the reason for this is to allow supports to hit this mythic item power spike early on and not have to be dragged behind everybody else on higher gold earnings, but we're going to talk about that more when we get to the mythic item section of this video. For now, all you really need to know about the support ward items is that they're pretty much the same. You're going to be able to use them the same, but they'll give you a little bit more early game gold. And with these starter items out of the way, we're going to hop into the full items and we'll talk about build paths and sub items as and when they're necessary. So the first item that we're going to talk about is Zeke's Convergence. Zeke's Convergence is a tanky support item which can buff your allies' attacks. Now the changes to the stats are relatively minor. It used to give 60 armor and 30 magic resist, but now it only gives 30 armor. They've taken away the magic resist and half of the armor there. It still gives 250 mana, and instead of 10% cooldown reduction, it now gives 20 ability haste. A new stat for this is 300 health, which is quite welcome, and the price has been increased, which is a bit of a trend for support items as we're going to see here, from 2,250 to 2,400. The active ability has also been changed slightly. You can use this on an ally still to designate them as an accomplice. And now, unlike the old Zeke's where you had to use your ult to proc this active's passive, it will proc whenever you immobilize an enemy. When you immobilize an enemy, your accomplice's attacks will deal additional on-hit damage, and their abilities will deal an additional magic damage. This damage will only be applied to the enemy that you have immobilized, unlike the old Zeke's where it just buffed their attacks to everybody after you used your ult. Overall, I'm expecting this to be quite a bit of a buff, but of course only to those champions that can regularly immobilize people. People that have very easy to hit CC like Nautilus and Leona are really going to love this, and it's going to give them quite a bit of damage, albeit that damage is going to be coming from the ADC. I'm expecting that Zeke's will be a bit more niche. You're not really going to see it on people like Lulu anymore, but on the champions that it works on, it's going to be incredibly strong. That's more than likely why they've upped the price, and we'll see how it balances out. The next item that we're going to talk about is Knight's Vow. Knight's Vow has been changed quite a bit more than Zeke's. Whereas it used to give 40 armor, they've totally removed the armor stat. They've also removed the bonus armor passive when you're near your allies. The 10% cooldown reduction has changed to just 10 ability haste, which is also a little bit of a nerf, but the 250 health has been upped to 400 health, and a new stat of plus 300% base health regen has been added. The price has also been increased for Knight's Vow. The cost is up from 2,200 to 2,300. Now this definitely feels like they're setting it up to be more useful with its passive, as we're going to see, by removing this armor stat but adding in a lot more health regen and a lot more health. I think it's going to be more useful for some people to use this active ability, and that active ability is very similar. You designate an ally who is worthy, just like the old Knight's Vow, and while your worthy ally is nearby, you'll redirect 15% of the damage they take to you. Now it's important to note here that the old passive only redirected full damage when you were a melee champion. This reduction in the damage redirected for ranged champion has been removed, and you also still have the movement speed buff towards your allies, but it only activates when your ally is below 50% health. Also, the damage reduction will stop if you have less than 30% health. I think overall they're probably trying to get Knight's Vow out of the hands of enchanters, because they've also removed any healing that is redirected to you as a Knight's Vow owner. This means that the old strategy that I've talked about in my previous previous videos of Lulu and Twitch, where you can buy Knight's Vow if the Twitch gets even half an item ahead, because he just does so much damage that he heals you so much, it doesn't matter how much damage you end up taking. I think they're clearly trying to redirect this as a specified tanky support item, rather than something that an enchanter could pick up if they were fed enough. Our next item is Mikael's Crucible. Mikael's is much the same really. It still gives you 20% heal and shield power. It still gives you 100% base mana regen. The 40 magic resist has been buffed to 50 magic resist, and the 10% cooldown reduction has been changed to 15 ability haste. Imagine overall this is going to be pretty similar in terms of its base stats, if not a slight buff in fact, but its price has been raised from 200 to 300. Also, the old passive that was called Harmony that gave you bonus health regen for every 25% bonus mana regen, that passive has just been completely removed. The active has been changed slightly. It still removes crowd control debuffs, except knockups and suppressions, which is still immune to it. But now, when you use this active on your ally, it also heals them for 1 to 200 health based on your ally's level. By the looks of it, the old slow resist that used to come into effect after the crowd control was cleansed has also been completely removed. Overall, I think this is a bit of a buff to Mikael's. As we're going to see, heal and shield power has actually become a proper stat in the game now, which stacks just like a magic resist or ability haste, and there seems to be quite a bit more heal and shield power in the game as well. This means that turning this into a healing ability, especially on enchanters, is going to be really good. I'm quite looking forward to see if this makes Mikael's more useful in solo queue, because it was relatively niche and kind of only used in the very higher echelons of solo queue and in pro play. Like I said though, the price has been increased to compensate for what is probably an overall buff, so we'll have to see where this one balances out as well. The next item that we're going to talk about is Redemption. Now, Redemption was always a super popular item, and I think that might be the reason that it hasn't really changed that much. It still gives you 200 health, the 10% cooldown reduction has been changed to 15 ability haste, and the mana regen has been nerfed to 100% from 150%. They have removed the 50% health regen, but then they have buffed the heal and shield power from 10% to 20%. The active is almost identical. You target an area within 5,500 range, you then reveal that area, and then as the redemption loads, after 2.5 seconds, you'll call down a beam of light that will restore allied health based on your ally's level, and it will deal true damage to enemy champions. However, instead of dealing a flat, immediate true damage to the enemy champions, it will now burn enemy champions for 10% of their max health in true damage. The active can still be used while you're dead, and overall, I think this is extremely similar to the old Redemption. One thing that appears to have been removed, however, is the 3 times your heal power on the healing that you do to your allies. This meant that the healing that you did to your allies with Redemption benefited from any bonus heal or shield power that you had 3 times as much. I think this has probably been removed simply because there is much more heal and shield power in the game now, as we've talked about. So I think that's just kind of a compensatory nerf rather than a flat out nerf. Once again, the price has been increased from 2,100 to 2,300, and given the overall increase in support item costs, I think Redemption is still going to be pretty strong and a pretty common item on all enchanter supports. And our final support item in the changed section is Ardent Censer. Ardent is probably one of the least changed items of the bunch. It still gives 60 ability power, it still gives 10% heal and shield power, and the base mana regen has been buffed from 50% to 100%. The increased movement speed and the cooldown reduction have been completely removed. However, there is no ability haste or movement speed on this item. The passive is much the same. Healing or shielding an ally enhances their attack speed and gives them some on-hit magic damage. However, now this effect also applies to yourself. This means that you will gain attack speed and on-hit magic damage alongside your ally. I'm really interested to see where this settles, because I think that we're going to end up seeing some supports that are really, really good with it. I also believe that there's a good chance that we're going to see this item and potentially the next item as well that we're going to talk about on non-support roles like junglers and mid laners, because it's still giving that 60 AP, which is relatively hefty, and then it buffs both of you. It could honestly be really good. The price for Ardent Censer has actually stayed the same at 2,300 gold, which is the exact same price of our next item, which most people are calling the AP Ardent Censer. It's a brand new item for Season 11, and it gives pretty much the exact same stats as Ardent Censer, as well as having an identical build path, 60 AP, plus 10% heal and shield power, and 100% mana regen. However, instead of giving you attack speed and on-hit magic damage from your basic attacks, when you heal or shield an ally, you will instead grant them movement speed speed, and 20 to 40 ability power for 3 seconds. Now, this is a little different from Ardent, that was giving you the buff for 6 seconds. But once again, this applies to both of you. This means that this can be used when you have a lot of spellcasters on your team, but I'm also kind of expecting to see it used on champions like Lux or Nidalee that will not only benefit from the AP themselves, but can actively proc this quite regularly to buff both themselves and an ally. Because of the much shorter duration, only 3 seconds, I think it might be a little harder to use, especially if you have burst damage spellcasters on your team, because you're going to want to make sure that you're buffing them at the right time. But overall, I'm just really happy to see this item, especially when my ADC hasn't done very well and I'm not really feeling like Ardent Censer to buff them is going to be the best thing in the world. Or if I get a Syndra or a Veigar APC, I can now pick up a Staff of Flowing Water and still be able to play that supportive and buffing role. And our next new item is an item that I have been asking for a very long time, and that is Chemtech Fumigator. Chemtech Fumigator is a support-based anti-heals item. This is something that I've wanted for so long because it's really frustrating in solo queue when you're playing a support that just can't really build Morellonomicon, Executioner's Calling, or Thornmail, so you feel unable to buy that anti-heals if your team is being stubborn. Now, this new support item gives you AP and it also gives you anti-heals. It costs just 2,300 gold and it has a passive on its anti-heals specifically designed to be great on supports. You see, when you deal magic damage to an enemy champion, you will now apply 40% Grievous Wounds. However, if you immobilize an enemy champion, you will apply 60% Grievous Wounds. This means that you get this massive 60% anti-heals whenever you immobilize an enemy champion. And given that most supports, even the mid lane mages that you're bringing into bot lane, have some form of hard CC, it's why they work with an ADC. It means that this item is going to be really great on them. Alongside it being quite cheap, I'm expecting this to get quite a lot of use, and I imagine, especially in the lower elos, it's going to feel a lot better now that supports have an option to really answer oppressive healing on the enemy team when the champions that maybe should be buying anti-heals just aren't because it's solo queue and people are stubborn. I also want to note that the build path for this item is really good. It builds off of the new Oblivion Orb. Now, the old Oblivion Orb cost 1,600 gold and it gave you a slew of stats, AP, health, and even flat magic penetration. The new Oblivion Orb costs just 800 gold. It no longer gives you any health, it no longer gives you any magic penetration, but it does give you the Grievous Wounds passive. This means that if you are an AP based support, especially one with no or hard to hit immobilization CC, like say a Soraka, you can now buy anti-heals for just 800 gold. I'm not expecting this to be the ideal situation, but because solo queue is far from ideal for most people, I'm still expecting that this will get some use and this will have a purpose. And on this note, for the tank supports, if you were to still want to go for Thornmail, then the new Bramble Vest costs just 800 gold. So now all of the anti-heals buildable items cost just 800 gold, which I think overall is great for supports, because previously the melee supports like Senna and Pyke had a bit of a one-up on enchanters and heal-based bot lanes because of that early Executioner's Calling. And I think now everybody's going to be able to have an answer to that playstyle. And counterplay is always good, assuming Riot can actually balance it properly. And the final item that we're going to talk about is the Vigilant Sightstone. This is a legendary item with a very unique build path. It starts off when you build the Stirring Sightstone. This is an epic item that you can only build once you hit level 13. It has absolutely no stats, and all it can do is allow you to store 3 control wards inside the Sightstone. It costs 1100 gold, and on its own, it's a relatively useless item. You can already hold 2 control wards, so why pay 1100 just to be able to hold another one? Well, this item has a quest, kind of like the support starter items where you have to earn so much gold to upgrade it to the next level. The Stirring Sightstone transforms into the Watchful Sightstone once you complete the Visions of Ixtal quest. This quest means that you must place 20 stealth wards. Now, these can come from either your trinket slot or your support ward item, and wards that you have placed before you bought this item, so before you've turned level 13 and had the chance to purchase this, do count. This means that by the time you're hitting level 13, the vast majority of supports will have already finished this. Really, I think that this quest is just an attempt to stop other laners other than supports from buying this item and abusing the huge vision bonus that it can give in very high levels of solo queue or in pro play. So you're a support, you've bought your Stirring Sightstone, you've upgraded it to your Watchful Sightstone. what do you get? Well, the Watchful Sightstone gives you 25 ability haste. It has no other stats, but it has a passive that will increase your stealth ward and control ward placement caps by 1. This is absolutely massive. This means that you, as just one person, can place up to 4 stealth wards and 2 control wards. For those of you who are vision conscious supports like myself, this is really going to be a game changer, especially considering to get here, all you need is 1100 gold, and to be level 13, it will really help into the mid and late game. However, it doesn't stop there. Once you've got your Watchful Sightstone, you can then purchase a Vigilant Sightstone. The Vigilant Sightstone is the legendary item. It has a total cost of 2300 gold, which means the upgrade from Watchful to Vigilant Sightstone is 1200 gold. For this 1200 gold, you buff your 25 ability haste on the Watchful Sightstone to a massive 40 ability haste on the Vigilant. You also gain 10% movement speed. I think this is really going to just be a late game purchase. Most supports are going to want to keep this item on them at all times, giving your team control wards and also having a little bit of stats. Alongside that ward placement cap buff, I think all supports are going to want to have this on them. So for those games that go super long, or those supports who get super fed, this is just an extra place to put your gold, get you some more ability haste and some more movement speed to help you actually do all of that warding and be a bit more relevant. Frankly, like I said, I think this is going to be a game changer, and I'm really glad about it because I hate being a support that's very close to full build and having to choose between a sub item and a control ward. With this, I won't have to do that. I'm always going to be able to have those control wards on me. And for those solo queue players who consider themselves much more vision conscious than the people in the same elo as them, I think this is really going to help them express that vision control and really have a bigger impact on the game with that vision control compared to those supports, especially in the lower elos, that don't respect just how powerful a control ward and good vision control can be. And now we're done for the support items. In our next video, we're going to be going over the mythic items. This includes 4 items that are going to be great on support specifically, but I want to bundle all the mythic items up together so that we can really go through what mythic items are and what mythic passives are and all of this good stuff that's new about this unique item set. So make sure you hit that sub button if you want to keep up with the series, and thank you very much for watching.